Hi, my name is Austin Wintory, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today, I am speaking with the Reverend Dr. Bradley Meyer, the first such Reverend we've had on the Game Maker Notebook. He is the audio director at Sucker Punch, and so we, of course, spoke about his experience at working on the Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yōtei, his long, fascinating, winding road through the game industry prior to that, outlooks on life, and of course, the backstory on why he is the Reverend Dr. Bradley Meyer. So he's a profoundly interesting guy, a lot of fun to talk to. I think you'll enjoy.
I will find every last member of the YOTEI 6, and I will bring you peace. I swear it.
Creatures such as you and I cannot resist the call of revenge.
I found something new to live for.
PlayStation.
Bradley Meyer.
Austin Wintory.
I believe our first Reverend on the Game Maker Notebook. How are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm doing very well. My credentials are actually, I know there's no video in the actual podcast, but
there will be on YouTube. So you're fully
great.
on display.
Legitimate right there. Right.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna perform a wedding right here on this episode.
That's right.
No, I so want to. One of the things I've been looking forward to in the sort of years that I've been pining away, fantasizing about doing this, is to unpack that, because it's so rare. It's like I've had many. I don't know how well or if at all you know Peter McConnell.
Oh yeah.
But his father, I believe, was a minister, and he kind of grew up around seminary world, and it has led to lots of interesting conversations over drinks and whatnot, over kind of the intersection of metaphysical questions and artistic ones or musical ones and whatnot. And I remember, and I'm totally, for what it's worth, uncredentialed, unqualified, or whatever, to have conversations like that. But I certainly like spurring people on who have a slightly more kind of ammo to bring to bear to that. But
well, I might let you down then if you actually kind of understand what those credentials really are. And
well, maybe so. I mean, I've whenever I first came across when I don't remember when I kind of first became aware of who you are from just the power of the internet. I don't honestly, it was years ago, but I can't quite remember how or why. But of course I was curious and I looked it up, and I remember going, interesting. I'm curious to ask at some point. And then I basically stuck a pin in it from there. But before we dial into more specifics, I'm just I'd love, how are you doing in the we're recording this in the relative immediate wake of the release of the Ghost of Yōtei. And how has the release treated you? Are you riding a wave of glory?
I would say it's a wave of relief. And I think it's been like probably 6 weeks. No, it's been 2 months. So about 2.5 months of relief that started when the reviews came out, because that was like, when you work on a game, even if you think it's good, you don't really know until other people play it. And, we're so close to these things that, like, even if you think it's good, you just can't give a really subjective answer. So So that was great. And then once fans and players started playing it, that was amazing. Just seeing everybody's positive responses. And the thing that I've really appreciated and felt very, very kind of lucky about is the amount of love that the audio has gotten. You know, I've heard call outs to the music, of course, but the sound design, even people explicitly calling out the mix, which was really special to me, that people are listening that intently and kind of noticing these things, and that they seem to be liking them. So yeah, it's definitely been a very kind of light and happy last couple months as we've realized that we have not made a terrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it a kind of cruelty that you can spend a pretty non-trivial percentage of your entire life on a single
Mhm.
project and not know what the outcome will be? Or it could even be one of those, in this case, you guys did have one nice thing going for you, being a kind of follow-up, is probably
Mhm.
more accurate than to say sequel, but a sort of a chaser, as it were, to a game that has already rather successfully established itself as a sort of beloved. Like, I loved when it was announced and people say, "Oh, it's a new Ghost game," as if that's like a 20-year running, that is a shorthand for this really long running IP idea. You know
Right.
what I mean? Which is to me, it's a powerful. That's an interesting kind of implicit approval in its own right. But um, so yeah, even despite, in other words, having the goodwill uh to build on, which can be its own double-edged sword in many ways. I'm sure we'll get into that, but still, it's crazy how you just simply can never know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, if you think about a really long career would be like a 50-year career. There's probably very few that end up even being that long. Um, because it essentially means starting at age 20 or
Well,
18 professionally, which, few of us are lucky enough to achieve that, or even trying that, and living and working without retirement well into one's 70s. It's basically, so you think about that. So even if it was a 50-year career, and it's not uncommon to spend 5 years on a game, it's literally 10% of
yeah.
one's career could easily be sunk into a single project without knowing the outcome. So I've been thrilled for you guys. This one,
Thank you.
Erica Ishii has been a friend of mine for a long time. And so it was a kind of a fun double-edged, like, and that was a surprise. She very dutifully honored the NDAs, because when I found out alongside the rest of the world, uh, but that just, I've wished for the success of this game. In other words, along multiple wavelengths, and it's
Oh,
been really
thanks.
lovely to see.
Thanks. Yeah,
And in a
it's
year with plenty of competition in that regard too.
oh, for sure. It's been, I mean, looking at the quality and the breadth of games coming out this year, and then even looking forward of like things that are coming out next year, it's just like, wow, there's so much good stuff. And I mean, you yourself, you've had, you know, a handful of really amazing titles this year as well. And it's just, there's
Oh, you're
just
very
so
kind.
much good stuff. And the only thing that I hate about it is my backlog
Oh my
continues
God,
to
dude.
get longer, and I just don't have the time to play.
Yeah, it is a real struggle. I really try to aggressively keep on top of playing current releases, knowing that when invariably the end of the year comes and I'll be asked to vote on things, in the various organizations that vote on things, um, to not basically try to survey a year's worth of games in December.
Right.
It's the thing I'm always trying to avoid. Part of it is a joyous task, because I love playing games. I do it. I would do it anyway. And it helps having podcasts like this one, and I do another one as well, where it helps provide kind of fodder. It's sort of this wonderful self-fulfilling feedback loop, in a way, where it helps those shows to be able to kind of really stay, that and this and the other one, to stay really current. But I get such professional benefit from that as well, because I
Mm.
I think
Oh, for
having
sure.
one's ear to the ground of, well, where does the bar really live? What are people doing? What are the experiments that are being tried? And
Yep. Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, we definitely try to. I mean, we haven't obviously for the last year or so because we've been so busy finishing the game. But as a audio team, we generally try to pick a game once a month and all get together and play it together.
mm,
So we can not only like, oh yeah, we're playing it separately. We have our opinions, we share them in chat, but like actively playing through and critically listening together and just hearing what people are doing and seeing if we can glean ideas off of that or just
that's
analyzing
awesome.
what other teams do. It's a ton of fun because we get to play games together, and then it's also just really enlightening and also often super inspiring just kind of to do this really deep listen to what other teams are doing because it's often so cool, what other teams are doing. You kind of pick up on those little nuances of their systems. And you're like, wow, that's so cool. How could we do that in our engine and with our tools?
Is there an example from the last year of one of those, or last, couple years, or basically, I imagine as you ramped up towards release, those got harder and harder to schedule. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what has jumped out at you? Basically, what in doing those, what has kind of made you all look at each other and go, "Ooh, wow!"
I'm trying to remember. Like, I remember we did play through Demon Souls when like it was maybe in early-ish during YOTEI because we wanted to, kind of hear like kind of a lot of different things about that game. From their 3D spatialization to their Foley to obviously sword combat. But then the other big thing for us, actually the other two big things. One was like what was their kind of physical object, kind of physics and destructiveness of sounds? Like, how did they handle that? Because ours, you know, like the Ghost games compared to Infamous are very kind of night and day. And they, like Infamous Second Son, everything was destructible. Ghost were much, much
For
more kind of reserved. And we
sure.
let that go a little bit more on Yotei, but still, it's that fine line of it's very expensive to make everything a physics object. So, how do you make the world feel reactive without having to kind of tag and model every single object? And then also their sound propagation and kind of like reverbs and just kind of occlusion obstruction and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was great just to hear, a really great sounding game and hear what we felt they were doing really well and things where we thought we could do better and just kind of taking some ideas. I mean, I guess we do also, since that was a PlayStation game, we also had the advantage of, oh, we could actually talk to those people and figure out like, hey, how did you design the IRs for your outdoor spaces or whatever it was? But yeah, that one was definitely and also I love playing games, but I suck at playing games and usually it's like I want to get through the game, so I play it on easy and I just get through so I can experience the story, I can experience everything without challenging myself because I'm too old to play something over and over again. I just get too frustrated. So the Souls games, because there's no such thing as easy,
Yeah,
I've
right.
never really been able to play them. And so Chris Walasek, one of my sound designers, loves Souls games. So it was great to actually get to like see and hear, a game that otherwise I can only experience watching on YouTube with its outstanding audio compression and all that,
Yeah, oh yeah. It's funny. I had a similar relationship with Elden Ring, where my wife became really fixated on that, and I think because in her case in particular, she was always a kind of she has always been a kind of on again, off again gamer.
Mhm,
If you go back 10, 13 years, she had a real fixation on BioShock Infinite.
mhm,
And there's been games periodically throughout her life that have gotten their hooks in, but then she'll go long periods without playing much, and just focus. She's a visual artist, and she'll just kind of be focusing on her work for long stretches of time. But I think the multiplayer aspect of Elden Ring, as distinct from all the other FromSoft
mhm,
titles, it became a way. She's from Costa Rica. It became a way for her to kind of hang out with her old friends that she basically hasn't seen in years,
mm,
with any regularity. It was like it became a kind of a party game for them, but she got so into it as a result that I mean, it's her clock time total is like 300 or 400 hours. She platinumed the game and then played through and basically platinumed it a second time. I mean, it's a level of commitment that's on a whole other level from my understanding. But to your point, there were so many times where I'd be kind of walking through and I'd hear something because I always appreciated those games, but I don't put 400 hours into basically any, there's very few games that would approach that for me. And so I just ended up missing a lot. So yeah, it was pretty awesome actually to be able to vicariously, or she'd kind of curate, she'd sort of time it knowing when I'd be getting home and say, oh, there's this thing you really need to check out. I really need you to hear the music in this boss fight or whatever. And so I was able to get quite a lot through osmosis in a similar way that you're describing, which is pretty valuable because it's always a shame. I always feel guilty to kind of bounce off of a title, or not even bounce off, but just feel intimidated by the sheer quantity, knowing how much work went in by a bunch of really top level professionals, especially in our corner of it, just wanting to hear all that sound design and music. And like you said, all that, I mean, all of it, like even impulse responses in going, well, they have 500 different dungeons in this game, and they probably made them all sound distinct because it's just one of those kind of games. I'd be curious to unpack that, but life is frustratingly short. But in any case, well, all right. In a way, I don't want to, I sometimes semi-organize these a bit chronologically to get a sense of how we've arrived professionally at one's latest, conquered hilltop, in this case, YOTEI. So why don't you back me up? I actually, because it's always fun when I actually don't know the answer, and I get to just learn in real time as opposed to prop someone up to lay things down for the record that I already know. Because I don't know your sort of origin story and how you got into the audio world and what your sort of childhood experiences, how that interfaced with games, all that sort of thing. So why don't you step me through that?
Okay, yeah. I mean, so going way back, I mean, I guess I've always been a gamer, and I think my dad is probably the person that I can thank for that, because when I was 4, I think he bought an Atari 2600, and so I remember playing that thing, but he also played it a lot. And I think we still have the picture, because back then, if you got a good score on a game, you would take a picture of yourself in front of the screen and then send it into Atari, and they'd be like, cool, you got a great score. And so I think I have a picture of him with this game Dragster, which was like a tractor pulling game with like his high score. But yeah, so he had, or we got the Atari, and I loved that thing. And then from there, I mean, I instantly gravitated towards PCs. And when I was 7 or 8. Oh yeah. So I was 8 and I went to summer camp for a week, and there they taught us Logo, which was this like rudimentary programming language where you had a green triangle that they called a turtle. Didn't look like a turtle, but they said it was a turtle. So you're like, cool, that's a turtle. And then you just like kind of use this, like, it was like basic language, kind of telling it to move in patterns, and then it would just create lines, and so you could draw things. And I thought that was super cool. And so I would like go into like computer stores as an 8-year-old and like just kind of have conversations that were often above the head of the salespeople there, asking about RAM and stuff like that. And so yeah, so I've just always been really into games since then.
That gives me such a flashback. Sorry to interject, but I had a similar relationship with the employees of my local, Radio Shack and Best Buy and that kind of stuff. And I'll never forget going I was maybe about 10 or 11 years old. And I don't remember, maybe I was a little older than that. But I seem to recall, it was around the time of LucasArts releasing X-Wing, the original X-Wing.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And because I remember going in and I was there was a kind of elderly, what I gathered was grandparents wanting to buy something for their grandkid, and they're asking, and I was kind of eavesdropping to the Best Buy employee, talking to them, and they kept saying, our grandson is really into Star Wars. We want to get him a Star Wars game, but we don't really know what that is. And the employee grabbing like Wing Commander and going, "This, yeah, give him this." And I remember I kept thinking, do I intervene? Is it the right thing to do? And I didn't. And I mean, here we are 30 years later, and I like still remember, I can picture the disappointment. Like, hey, little Jimmy, we know you love Star Wars, so take a look at this, and opening up and finding, and no shade thrown to Wing Commander or whatever it was, but if just, to a 10-year-old or however old the kid would have been, I'm sure it was a disheartening moment. It was one of those moments where I realized I could get a job here, I think, because these people apparently, there's no like test on the video game knowledge. Yeah, it's strangely seminal childhood memory. So anyway, whereabouts was this taking place, by the way, for you? Where were you?
So this
growing
was
up?
in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. And then actually it's funny, I'd never put these two things together, but so I started video games about then. 1981, I was 5 years old, and we had a guy in the neighborhood who worked for the cable company. So he gave us a scrambler. So we had all the cable channels, including this new one called MTV. So MTV just started. I was in kindergarten, and I watched MTV. I think I went to school for 4 hours a day, and I probably watched MTV for about 8 hours a day. Like, I would get up early, watch MTV, go to school, get home, watch MTV, have dinner, watch MTV, go to bed. Like, I was obsessed. And so it was around the time that I was 5, I decided I want to be a rock star. And then my first kind of step towards becoming a rock star was, I want a guitar. My parents got me an acoustic guitar for whatever birthday or holiday or something. And the first thing I did with this guitar is I just tweaked every tuning peg, because that's what the rock stars did on MTV. I don't think I ever got that guitar back in tune. But I took one lesson.
The performance of the tuning pegs is what mattered.
Exactly. I mean, I want to be a rock star. I don't want to learn how to play the thing. So yeah, I took one lesson.
Funny.
I learned how to play Mama Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys in A, because this was Georgia. And I never took another lesson, and I didn't pick up the guitar again until I was like 15. And then from when I was 15, I started getting more into music, and actually taught myself how to play, basic chord structure and all that stuff. I still can't read. I guess I can read music, but like at a like semi-literate, like I can like look at a note and be like E A D. Oh, okay, that's G sharp. Yep. E A B. I can't like actually like sight read, but but yeah. So in my adolescence, I started playing guitar, and then got a 4-track, and then started just getting. That was probably around the same time that I was getting very interested in surrealism, and just kind of. I think that's where I got turned on to musique concrète and Varice and like all this weirder shit. And so I started just, I guess, in between the MTV and the adolescence phase, I did do a lot of just playing around on audio cassettes and doing like editing audio cassettes, making my own little audio plays. And like, I would like remix a song by taking, 2 cassettes and like editing it into like 2 different things. And so I was always fascinated with audio, and always loved playing video games, and didn't ever expect that they could kind of smash together. I graduated college in 1997. I went to UC Berkeley up in the Bay Area. Was unemployed for a month. I actually worked on a video game while I was unemployed. I did a bunch of voices for a game that I don't think ever came out, called Space Cadet. I had some friends who were like QA tech support at this local video game company, and they were trying to make their own game. So I was like, sure, I'll come in and do some voices for $50. So that was my first paying game job. And then, I got tired of being unemployed, went to a temp agency in Berkeley, and they saw me and they said, "Oh, you look like a freak. You should work at Berkeley Systems." It's just like, okay, what's Berkeley Systems? Oh, it's a video game company up the street. So, so they ended up placing me there. My first job was so Berkeley Systems was famous for the After Dark screensavers, which was like the flying toaster back when you needed a screensaver on your computer.
Yeah.
And then they also had been working with.
It's like oddly iconic. Honestly, it's one of those. It's
I
kind of like
mean-
that. It's kind of like that photo of the Green Hill. It's also kind of, I think, up in the Bay Area somewhere.
Oh, right.
It was
Yeah.
The wind. It's like the most seen photograph of all history or whatever, because of the use of the default desktop. Similarly, like some of those early screensaver. It's kind of like, have you ever seen the little mini documentary about the guy that made all the Apple stock sounds?
No.
Like, like he sampled his Canon camera for the screenshot sound. And also it was one of those where I'm trying to remember the specific, but the kind of error noise was something that he had kind of subtly sampled from like a Beatles song. And that's why he labels it "So Sue Me," but it's phonetically spelled out. There's always this in the old like Apple 2G era, there'd be this stock, and maybe a little after that, but kind of early Mac OS kind of era. There was that sound that's called like SOSUMI, Sosumi, where it was always kind of like, what does that word mean? It turns out that it was kind of him like goading the lawyers. There's I know I'm remembering the details wrong, but you can find a little documentary interviewing this guy about how he was paid basically an hourly rate, and his sounds are some of the most known ever.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, all that afield. So yes, the After Dark toaster screensaver.
Yeah. So
you found your home.
Yeah. Well, I started working there. My first job was they just gotten bought by. It's so hard to remember. They got bought by Sierra, and Sierra in turn got bought by a company called Sendent. And so mergers, consolidation, they had just laid
Sierra,
off.
as in the like Ken and Roberta Williams Sierra.
Yes, which actually, to tie that back in, I loved the Sierra games as a kid. Space Quest, King's Quest, Police Quest, all those. And it was my dream.
Leisure Suit Larry, man.
Leisure Suit Larry, I bought at Egghead Software. I'd now moved to Southern California. Bought it. I beat it in 2 hours, and I was so pissed that I returned it and got a refund because I was like, it was too easy. I probably didn't understand half the jokes, but
that's hilarious.
But yeah, so my dream as a kid was to work for Sierra. And I didn't realize it until I became a sound designer at this place and got my first paycheck, and it had the Sierra logo on it, that I was like, oh shit, I did it.
That's so funny.
All downhill from here.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but so my first job was cleaning out everybody's desks that just got laid off after their merge. And then they liked me, so they kept me there, and I was just doing administrative duties.
Presumably you did an excellent job cleaning those desks. And they were like, we're going to keep you around.
Oh, here, look at all of our HR files now and see what everybody makes. And you're 20, who cares? And then they hired me on as their shipping facilitator. So I basically started my video game career in shipping. And but I was
what a wonderful snapshot of the era in which you were joining, basically.
Yeah, I mean nowadays kids are coming out of school with master's degrees in sound design, and I'm just like, well, I like making sounds on my 4-track.
Well, and I'm also assuming that shipping in a way involved logistics of literal physical shipping. I'm assuming is what you're like, or is it, does it mean shipping in the launch sense?
No.
Obviously,
yeah. I was sending out boxes of merch of like,
yeah, right, exactly.
That video games to electronics boutique, or I'm sending hats to this radio station, or it was
right.
It was that mundane shipping. But yeah, I was an entitled young white kid, so I thought that I should be doing something creative. And so I was very vocal to them of like, hey, you guys, you should hire me to do something creative. And I met their sound designer once, and which was a rare thing because never saw him. And he took me out to lunch, told me about this thing called MIDI. And I was just like, wow, dude, that's such a cool job. And then like a few weeks later, the VP of product development calls me into his office and says, so we hear you're into sound. I'm like, uh-huh. I'm like, well, we just fired the sound designer. So what kind of experience do you have? And
Meaning the guy that had taken you to lunch?
yeah, because I happened to see him on one of the rare days that he ever came in. He basically stopped coming into work.
I see. So it's
and
not
so I
that
think
you
they
had
were
the
like,
Midas touch.
no. Yeah. They were just like, well, here's a cheap replacement, maybe. And so, yeah, so
Wow.
I lied to him, told him I had a ton of experience, and they're like, cool. I was like, oh yeah, I've worked on student films. I'd never worked on I'd never worked on a computer program related to sound at that point. I think the most I'd done with computers and sound was like programmed, play notes in BASIC or something. Like I'd always kept those two worlds separate of I tried to learn, programming in BASIC, but I didn't understand what the word syntax meant in syntax errors. So I kind of gave up. And on the music side or the sound side, I just did weird experimental shit with samplers and 4-tracks. I never could imagine those two worlds colliding for me.
What I love
But I
about
ran
this
home that
story,
night.
though, is that it highlights that none of us ever really know what we're doing until we're suddenly accountable to that knowledge. Probably the most recurring, or one of the most recurring questions that I get when I speak to students or folks kind of trying to get the lay of the land of the industry
Mhm.
is something to the effect of, when will I know I'm ready to tackle? And I will frequently point to stories, and now yours is going to be my new go-to story of I say, you not only are so many of the careers of people who've really managed to stay in the industry for a long time, almost never did they start with something like that. It's just they found themselves at a crossroad with opportunity and frequently had to just kind of bullshit their way into letting someone try. My story,
Mhm.
one of our circles mutual, was Chuck Dowd
Mhm.
when that game company was making their first title, Flow, and he started asking me all these questions, and I was literally still a college student, and I basically lied to Chuck and told him a bunch of things. I told him I was about 6 years older than I was, and I'd done all this stuff, and I was like, I just have to be able to get through this meeting, and then I can probably survive.
Yeah.
And so many stories start that way, where there's people not necessarily lying per se, but just the idea of do you know what you're doing? Not really, but they don't need to know that. I just need to trust that as soon as I'm off this phone call or I'm out of this room, I can go dig into a manual or go look up a tutorial or call someone who can help me and figure it out.
Yeah. Passion and drive are very misunderstood attributes, I think, for in a lot of people, and that can get you a lot of where you need to go. But even to that kid's point, though, I mean, I still frequently in my career question like, "Fuck, can I really do this?
For
Am I
sure.
really doing
No,
this?
but
Holy shit! When are
actually,
they
that's a
going to
great,
figure this out?"
I couldn't agree more. That's a perfect kind of addendum to the point, is that at no point do you seemingly just sit back and go, I'm the master of my domain. Anyone who does think that is almost always creating garbage.
Yeah.
Because all the checks and balances and all the hard time that you give yourself that you might have yielded something good, if that process goes away, then like none of us are that good. If you're not critical of the work, it's just never. Anyway, yes. So I love that. I love that you that your story sort of validates the thesis yet again. So all right. So continue. So you managed to
Oh,
convince them.
right. So yeah. So I basically ran home that night. I banged out some stuff on my 4-track, claimed it was from a film. Grabbed some other stuff that I had written that was just it's god awful. Threw it on a cassette because this was 1998. And yeah, and so yeah, he listened to it, said it's nothing you're ever going to hear in any of our games, but yeah, it shows what you're doing. You got the job. And then kind of to your point before, So they fired the sound designer because he hadn't been coming in. And so they had farmed out all of their work for the next 6 months. So I now had this buffer to lock myself in my office and teach myself MIDI and Pro Tools
wow.
and, you know, how to sound design. And actually the first thing that I did to teach myself audio editing is I learned how to rip CDs because we had a CD burner and a CD, like a CD-ROM that could like, it was crazy. And so I took Slayer's Seasons in the Abyss and I edited out all the guitar solos because I fucking hate guitar solos and I like riffs. So that's how
funny.
I taught myself to do audio editing is I just removed all the guitar solos from that album and reburned it to a CD.
I feel like that approach applied to a lot of sort of iconic 70s and 80s metal will make for some very succinct
Short
songs.
Yes, exactly. It was like, cool. This is now like the length of a punk rock song. I like it. But
Iron Butterfly, now 3 minutes long. Or
it's
like
their karaoke
Genesis.
version.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. What also crazy opportunity that you got effectively 6 months of paid training.
God. I mean, I couldn't have done it otherwise. I was so fucking lucky. And I also had very supportive people that I worked with. I mean, I remember one of the producers there, her name's Amy Dallas, and she's like the head of Clutch Play, which is a game company in Portland now. But I remember her like basically my first bout of imposter syndrome, you know, in 1998 of me being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making this shit up. And how are they going to allow me to do this? And her just being like, well, this is your job and you can figure it out and you got it. And, you know, the fact that I managed to fake it long enough.
Did they give you a sense of what at the end of that, 6 months when like what was coming so you could kind of cater what you were
Not really. It was
yourself?
more just like, well, we don't have anything for you right now, but we will. And so actually it wasn't like, oh, I can't do anything for 6 months, just learn. It was that, well, all of our projects are farmed out, but we'll see if we can give you some stuff. So I think the first thing that I did was they made a set of games called After Dark games. It was just basically games based on their screensaver. And it was all just like clones. I mean, there was like Solitaire. There was a Pac-Man game, but it was like they had a dude on a riding lawnmower as a screensaver. So it was like Pac-Man with the riding lawnmower. And we did like a Zaxxon clone that was the flying toaster. And so it was just stuff like that. So that was like, well, they'd hired this woman to do all the music and sound effects, but I talked to her. I was like, well, could I do like maybe some sounds for these games? And she's like, yeah, sure. So that was kind of like how I first started doing stuff, was just like, hey, you're working on this thing, but I'm here now. So can I do some work with you? But it was also really siloed. Like I didn't ever have any kind of like audio people to talk to. And,
Right.
and in fact, the first audio person I met, who I'm fortunately still really good friends with, was Karen Widener at 8-Ball Sound. And she like reached out to me and she'd had this amazing resume at that point of like some of my favorite games I'd ever played. And I was just like, why, how is this person even, why did she even care to talk to me? And so it's cool that, you know, we are both still making it work and still going. But it wasn't until my next job that I actually had like an audio team and kind of learned of like, oh, wow, I can actually bounce ideas off of other people and I can learn from other people. It was just living in this weird silo of I'm trying to figure everything out myself with no sense of community. I mean, this was like very early days as far as like the sense of a game audio community even. So I just was in this silo. And then, but yeah, so from there, we got bought and turned into a .com. And then, I started, you know, I was basically went from making interesting online and CD-ROM games to making glorified advertisements for online only, like slot machine kind of crap. So I started looking for another job and I got hired.
How old were you around this time?
So I started I was 21 when I got hired as a sound designer. So yeah, I've been doing this for 28 years now, I think, which is insane. This is the only career that I've had. I mean, so beyond fortunate that like the things that I love, I somehow tricked the world into letting me do for a living.
Preaching to the choir, man.
And it's been, I mean, luck all the way through my career. I mean, so from working in Berkeley, I moved to Hawaii and worked at Konami for 5 years.
Mm.
Um,
I don't think I realized that Konami had an outfit in Hawaii.
so in 99 or 2000, the state of Hawaii started offering tax breaks for tech companies in an effort to start luring more business there so that they could rely on something other than tourism. And so Square moved offices there, and they
I
did
mean, that's what a slam dunk offering from the standpoint that, you know, if so much of the tech world is constantly trying to hold hands with Japan,
Yeah, I mean,
to be a hell of a lot closer to Japan than
yeah,
anywhere else in the US is a great.
it was a brilliant idea. It just didn't really work for anybody. I mean, because Square did the Final Fantasy movie out there, and part of Final Fantasy 9 or 10, I think it was probably 9.
Right.
And when the Final Fantasy movie tanked, they shut down. I mean, the Konami office, we just made shovelware, basically. I mean,
Mm,
a lot of our games, even if they were good, they were only making 20, 30,000 units of them.
right, I see.
Tetris was out there because that's where Hank Rogers lived. And so they were out there. But yeah, I mean, it was wild to live in Hawaii for 5 years, but it was also like all of the stories that you heard about Konami in that time were all true.
Mm,
Um, it was also a hard place to be. I'm in paradise, but I'm stuck working way too many hours on 15 Frogger games. Um,
sure.
but but um, but yeah, so I was actually I was going to leave the industry at that point because I'd felt like, well, fuck, my career is being driven in the ground and I got to get off this rock. I'd been there for 5 years. So I was going to go back to school and study basically ways to make knowledge retention more effective uh, for education. Um, and
What got you onto that? And do you specifically mean early education, or do you
not
just mean
necessarily, no.
at any?
So so basically I decided like I was having a moral quandary at that time. I was in my mid 20s. I was stuck on this island, very kind of bored and overworked. And I decided like, you know what, video games, I'm seeing like my friends and they're like younger brothers and stuff, and they're just sitting there rotting their brains playing video games. And they're not going outside and enjoying this amazing place that we live. They're not getting exercise. They're not having like actual meaningful intellectual conversations with their friends. They're just playing video games and drooling. So I was like, I need to get out of this industry and I need to do something for the good of humanity. So I started looking at educational degrees and I found this one at Stanford that was learning design and technology. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And I had to take the GRE for that. And so the way that I studied for it, for the vocabulary language part of it, was I wrote a song and then I took all of the vocabulary words and I sang all those vocabulary words over this song. And I just listened to it over and over again. And just like your ABCs, I was able to then recall all those words based on the melody of the song. And so that was kind of the impetus for like, well, we learn this by watching Sesame Street. It obviously still works when you're an adult. Like, why can't we figure out how to use this more to help make knowledge retention more effective for humans? So that was my plan. At the same time, I was still applying for jobs constantly, and I had applied for one however long ago, and they had gotten back to me, and it was a studio called Shaba Games in San Francisco. And so I started talking to them and interviewed with them, and I'm waiting because the college applications are due and I'm waiting to hear from them. And I decided, look, if they offer me the job, I'm not going to apply to college because this would move me back to the Bay Area where I was and all my friends are. And I don't want to know that I got into Stanford if I am taking a job and they're gonna move me out there and blah, blah, blah. The deadline's coming. I don't hear from them. I apply. The very next day they offer me the job.
Huh.
So I took the job. And then I found out I got in to Stanford like 4 months later, but I was like, I can't, in good conscience, I cannot take this job. They just moved me out here. I'm in the middle of a project. I can always go next year. And that was the last time I thought about a new career. But yeah, so then I was at the Shaba Games for 4 or 5 years, and we did Tony Hawk and Shrek and Spider-Man. And then Activision shut us down. Started a startup with some coworkers there called Free Range Games, which is actually still around. I think they just did like a Middle Earth game. And at that time, we were making the transition from Facebook games, which were big because this was like 2008 or 9,
Right.
to making online games again with Unity. So yeah, I did a bunch of games, and then I saw the job posting at Sucker Punch, and I'd been a huge Sucker Punch fan since Sly Cooper. In fact, working on a Frogger game, we had like Sly Cooper up in Hawaii as like, this is what we want. Like, we want our Frogger to have the personality that Sly Cooper does. Why can't we do this? And there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, so I applied just thinking like, well, it'd be good to practice my interview skills. I don't know that I would take the job because there's no way in hell that I want to leave the Bay Area again and move up to Seattle. I interviewed, and the interview was awful in that every single person I met was amazing. And the interview like couldn't have gone better. And it was just like every single person I met, I was like, fuck, I really like them. This place seems really cool. This sucks. I don't want to take this job. And, you know, by the end, it was like, I have to do it. And so yeah, I was like, look, worse off, I can quit and come back in a year. And that was almost 14 years ago.
So the jury's still out technically.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, so I want to step through your, obviously, the like Sucker Punch sort of the lineage there, but you do have a doctorate. Do you not? Like, okay, yeah. So where in the timeline is that, like a thing that has happened post Sucker Punch? Like,
no. Okay, so I got my ordainment and my first doctorate and my first job. And the reason for that was my roommate actually worked for Psygnosis at the time, which was actually another Sony studio at the time. And he got ordained through the Universal Life Church. And the Universal Life Church is like, yep.
Yeah.
Classic online thing.
Yeah, no, my father was also.
Yep. You want to get ordained, you give him your email address. Boom. Congratulations,
yeah, exactly.
You're a minister. So, and he got that on his business card. I was like, oh, dude, that's cool. So I was like, I want that on my business card, but I can't copy him. So I got to go one step further. They offered doctorates. So for $35, I got my Doctor of Metaphysics. And
so wait, that's what is entailed in
well, there's what it says it entailed and what it actually entailed. So what it said it entailed is send us $35 and we will send you some reading materials and a test, and take the test, send it back. If you pass, we will send you your degree. Otherwise, read it again, take the test again, and we'll keep going. You don't have to pay again, but you just got to get it right before we send you your degree. So I was like, great, that's awesome. They sent me the reading material and my doctorate. There was no test. There was no.
That's hilarious. So they just assumed, yeah, you're.
I guess they're just like, cool, we got your money here. You can say you're a doctor. I was really upset about it because I actually wanted to at least feel like I earned it, but instead I just basically paid an online
mail order doctorate in metaphysics.
But yeah, so I became Reverend Doctor at that point, and I never intended to use it like as like, oh, this is my title, I'm the Reverend Doctor, whatever. But it definitely caught on after a while. I found in those early times it was very useful more for dealing with annoying landlords. Like when I moved to Hawaii,
That's hilarious.
I moved in with a buddy of mine, and we got this like letter like, you guys are leaving your surfboards by the bicycle parking and we're gonna fine you, blah blah blah. And I just sent them a letter. I'm sorry, I just moved in and I would never do such disrespectful activities. You must have me confused with somebody else, Reverend Doctor. And they're like, oh, so sorry, sir. We didn't realize. Everything's fine. You know, it's just
Oh my Lord, that's so funny.
yeah. And then so they had 2 doctorates at that time, a doctorate of metaphysics and a doctor of immortality. And I was like, oh fuck, the immortality one would be pretty cool. And then I decided later, like, I should get that too. And it was gone. And I was so disheartened.
So
and
it was
then,
not an in fact immortal offering.
exactly.
That was there.
However, fast forward to September 2014, and they got them again. Yeah, I'm gonna put this like
they've reinstated.
They re-added the immortality. Probably was a big seller. So I got that in 2014. The good news about that one is they actually sent me a test. So I actually had to earn that one. So I earned my immortality.
And what exactly do they ask you to?
I can't fully remember right now because it was over 10 years ago, but it was actually like I mean, you know, the reading material or whatever. It's, you know, the Universal Life Church is very non-denominational, and it is just kind of like whatever kind of spiritualism you want to believe in. And so it was definitely kind of more along the lines of metaphysics and quantum physics and just kind of the unreality of everything than like, oh, here's how you become immortal. It was more just like, well, you know, time isn't really linear, and you know, kind of more just the absurdity that of the constraints that we put around our existence.
And how much does it continue to frame your, especially first encounters with people?
I definitely get for people who like have heard of me, I do get a lot of the like, so what's the deal with that?
Yeah, I would get.
Is that serious? Like, and you know, I try to be like, no, I'm not like, I didn't go to school for this shit. I just paid for it or gave them my email address, but it looked
so
good
funny
on a business card.
Crucially, have you officiated
Oh, yes.
a wedding?
Yep. I have officiated 3 weddings, and I renewed my parents' vows for their 40th wedding anniversary. And so yeah, some of my very best friends I've had the pleasure and honor of marrying, which has been super awesome. Funny thing is, I think all of them I married in California, and you do not need to be a minister to marry people in California. You just
I was
going to
say that was going to be literally my next question is that my understanding was that basically as long as the court gets the proper paperwork filed, the ceremony has essentially no consequence. And so the whole concept of being ordained is somewhat anachronistic, but I was not sure if I thought you're at this point much more likely to know than I did. But that's so funny. Hilarious. I just love that you're however many decades running, just owning this branding, basically. Not a lot of ministers who have 5-year-old 8 hours a day MTV stories. I would suspect that is a very tight Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Well, okay, fantastic. So the great Reverend Doctor has begun their journey at Sucker Punch. What were the first titles? And also and forgive me, say again your actual title coming in.
So I think
the
I
nature
was
of your
hired
responsibilities, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was hired as audio lead, I think was my technical title, but you know, I mean, something that I'd learned. So Konami was a really great experience because, as I said, it was the first time that I'd had an audio team, and our audio manager there was phenomenal. His name's Jun Funahashi, and he's such a wonderful human, but he also he taught me so much about how I operate now as a manager. And one of the cool things about kind of how we were set up there was, we were a small team. I think we were at our peak. There was like 3 sound designers, and we were working on 3 to 5 projects at a time.
Mm.
So the way that we were able to do that is we were each the lead on one project, and then we all helped each other out. So it was also nice because then, I mean, I worked on 7 Frogger games in 5 years, but even though I got really sick of Frogger, I was still able to jump on Dance Dance Revolution or this motocross game or this soccer game or Jurassic Park. So I was still always able to like do other things to like keep my design skills fresh and just to keep my brain moderately more sane. But being a lead on a project, even if it's a Game Boy Advance game, it was like I still had to like do the dialogue plus the music plus the sound design, which is also what I'd done at Berkeley Systems. So I'd always had it instilled in me of like, I'm a sound designer, so I mostly do sound design, but I have to be aware of the entire package, and I have to make sure everything is happening correctly. I quickly learned that there are much better composers than me and much better voice actors than me. But still being aware of all that stuff, that kind of transcended my whole career, and I kind of became the audio director at Shaba Games because I was the person there who knew how to do all that stuff and who did do all that stuff.
Right.
And that just kind of transitioned into what I was doing at Sucker Punch when I got here was, I instantly jumped in and was kind of, talking to the music team and making sure that we were kind of on the same page and building the systems correctly and, talking to the folks running the dialogue to make sure that everything was set up and kind of running all of that. But I was also still, I mean, this was like infamous Second Son and infamous First Light was what I got to Sucker Punch in pre-production for infamous Second Son. And it was myself and one other sound designer. So I was still doing a lot of sound design. And even on Ghost of Tsushima, I did a lot of sound design, and it was really only like towards the end of Tsushima that I started to like walk that back a little bit and kind of finally accept like I need to kind of step back and be the director and the manager more than the sound designer.
Sure.
I still get to do some stuff occasionally, but I am definitely trying to focus more on letting my team make awesome stuff rather than
Sure.
making not quite as awesome stuff as them.
Well, but I also imagine out of practical necessity, it's, each one, generally speaking, especially at a studio like that, it seems like despite the fact that the infamous games were not exactly small games, I would think that these Ghost games are they on the face of it seem like a kind of order of magnitude
Oh
more
yes.
assets and complexity and systems,
Yep.
and obviously a big open world game. Even despite the selling point, I remember it very well with the destructible terrain, um, or destructible everything. That was sort of the calling card. I'm sure added a lot of novel sound design considerations that you would not have had to contend with. It's still just the sheer mass of game
Yep. Yeah,
is
it was.
a whole other
I
level
mean,
larger.
I kind of considered Tsushima like the first true open world game that Sucker Punch made, because the infamous series was considered open world, but it always took place in one city, and that was it.
Right.
And this was, I mean, going from Second Son to Tsushima, I think it was 14 times bigger. And
Yeah, wow.
so, that definitely caused us to,
By like map size or something, I assume?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
by map size and probably I guess when you think about time, it was probably 4 to 8 times bigger, depending on how much of a completionist you are. Like the Golden Path, you could probably get through, you know, I mean, Second Son, I don't remember. It was maybe a 10 to 12 hour game, I would guess. And Tsushima was 40 to 80. So,
Right.
yeah, it was definitely, I
And
think a lot of what we did in those transitions, even from Second Son to Tsushima, was a lot of like, we need to reassess all of our systems and figure out how can we effectively do more with less. How can we propagate sounds across a wider swath of the world and sound good. And we kind of doubled down on that for YOTEI of like, cool, we now have these great systems. How can we make them better? And how can we, continue to do more with less? Because we need to always be smart about kind of the resources that we're using and how much time and money things cost.
And did you say that Second Son was midstream when you joined? Is that what you said?
No, we were in pre-production, and
Oh, it was
that was
okay.
yeah, that was one of the two things that like finally sealed the deal for me to come up here was you're going to get to work on Second Son. I was hoping it was going to be Sly Cooper, but you're going to get to work on Second Son, which is a PS4 launch window title. And so, the thought of, especially now I'm working at like a startup doing mobile games, to you are going to be working on the next console that's coming out, like before it's even out.
Right.
That was exciting. And then the other thing was like, and then after Second Son, we're going to work on a brand new IP. And that is what eventually became Ghost. And at that stage in my career, I've been a sound designer and an audio director for 15 years or whatever it was at that point. I had never worked on a brand new, unique IP from conception to completion. Everything had always been a sequel or a licensed property. I'd never like had the opportunity of like, here's a new IP, and it didn't get canceled and we released it. So those two things were just so compelling to me.
Oh yeah.
I never would have dreamed they turned out like they would. But again, I'm exceptionally lucky so far.
Was it Amon Tobin that did Second Son?
No, he did Infamous 2.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which was really awesome. And so Second Son, we had 3 composers actually. We had Mark Canham, Nathan Johnson, and Brain Montoya.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because that was, kind of part of it, I think, was just like navigating the relationship with the Sony music team and trying to figure out kind of how that worked. And, I was kind of the new person there because Infamous 1 and 2 had been, Nate Fox here, creative director, and Dave Malloy, who is kind of our video wizard. Those 2 guys had been very involved. And then I kind of jumped into the mix along with
I think my old friend Jim Dooley also worked on
Dooley
Infamous,
did
like the first
Infamous
one maybe.
and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's why I was curious to ask, is because if you're kind of stepping in, even if the game was in pre-production, there's going to be elements of it that pre-exist or which are conscientiously a break from the past. And I was curious to kind of learn, to what extent you were stepping into that. Also, because you highlight an interesting trend, might not be the right word, but there's a lot of people in audio lead or audio director positions that nonetheless, it's mostly sound and mix, and then someone else jockeys to kind of own music. And so you're kind of just receiving it from them to make sure that it plays with the other elements. And then obviously there's other audio directors that music is their principal baby on the project. And it's always a little different and a little hard to kind of know. And especially when you're starting in a new position, that's where I was curious to kind of learn how those came together as someone who's obviously selfishly very interested in music as well. So, and just how different studios navigate it. It's always fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because so before I moved up, I went to the PlayStation campus in San Mateo because I was living in the Bay Area. So I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to be working with you guys. Let's have a little face to face. And, with the PlayStation music team was like, oh, you're the same team that does Uncharted and all these big,
this was
amazing,
what, like you said, 2011, 12?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, I
so
mean,
all the familiar names were there. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, wow, these guys are great. They actually showed me when I went in to talk to about Peter McConnell again, they were working on the Sly Cooper Thieves in Time game. And so they were playing me mixes that they'd just gotten of some of his, amazing stuff. And
it's funny because he's so associated with Double Fine. And of course, the World of Warcraft. I'm suddenly
Oh
blanking on
yeah.
the Hearthstone.
Yep.
Um, and but Sly Cooper, I always feel like is kind of underappreciated. It's sort of a wonderful cousin of his Psychonauts music, where
Yep.
it's got
Totally.
that sort of slightly jazzy, very Peter. Yeah,
Yep.
he's one of, to me, Grim Fandango is like the apex
Yes.
predator of game music, and so anything Peter just always gets a special place in my heart. And anyway, I
Yeah.
don't get occasion to talk about Sly Cooper very often, so you're making my day here. But anyway, I love that. Yeah,
But yeah, so I definitely went into it of like, cool, I can be more hands off on the music because we have this amazing team. Um, and and then I think when we got to the Ghost games, we were trying something a little different, and it was such a fine line of um wanting to do something that felt authentically Japanese while still kind of making sure that we check all the boxes of hitting our big narratives, making everything epic. There's definitely this kind of tendency for them to, want to go big on the orchestral sections, on strings and brass and all that kind of stuff. And I think so I started kind of getting more involved on Tsushima, and Yotei was actually the most involved that I had been with the music specifically. And you know, I look at it and I think it was definitely the right decision, and I think what I will be hopefully doing moving forward. And which is not to say that I mean, the music for Yotei, I am blown away by, and it's by far the result of Tomo Otoa, the composer, and the soloists, and the entire team that put that together more than me, trying to keep the balance between Wild West and feudal Japan in line.
oh, I
But
want to get to that in just a minute, because that there's so much I want to hear. And but I'm curious on Tsushima. I did one of these with Ilan in the immediate
that's great.
wake of that game coming out, and I remember him talking about the uh it was music from one of his Rafe Fiennes movies that I
Oh
guess
yeah,
was kind of
Coriolanus.
was yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And that had made him very intrigued uh, to work on the project, because it was like a super not generic title to kind of get to him through, you
Hmm.
know?
Yep.
And having heard his side of that story, I was curious if you had, what your version of that was, and how that all obviously went from there.
Yeah, I mean, so with Ilan specifically, I mean, we knew this game was going to be huge, and we weren't convinced that a single composer could do it. So we wanted a Japanese composer for a multitude of reasons. I mean, somebody who understands the culture, that can write in that style, was really important to us. And we found Shigeru Mabayashi, and he's done way too much stuff
Oh
to
yeah.
even mention.
Yeah, a bit of
But
a legend.
yeah. And so he was great, but we his music felt very like, this is our time machine. Like
Right.
he will transport us to Japan, feudal Japan. It's so great. But we felt like we were missing kind of the melodic elements that we needed for the story and all that. And so Ilan really interested us because like so many of his scores were just so unique. And Coriolanus was definitely the biggest one of like, it's just, I mean, I'd seen the movie years before and really enjoyed it. Um, but just listening to the score on its own, it's just like such this like brooding, but also very sparse,
Uh-huh.
kind of, and just a really unique instrument palette. And so it just felt like this guy's pretty interesting. There'd been some kind of him and Ume had actually worked on titles together, so we were hoping for some synergy there. But but uh, yeah, I mean, it ended up working great, and Ilan just took to it. I mean, he did
Sure seemed
some
like.
really deep dives into from learning and writing in Japanese scales. He found like every kind of player of Japanese instruments in England, and we ended up recording, of course, plenty in Japan as well. But yeah, he really, really kind of took to the assignment, and obviously, all the music there was great. And one of the things that I loved about the score at the end is, our editing team at PlayStation does so much to really kind of uh, present the music within the game. Much of what the composers write and what is on the soundtrack is not what you hear in the game. That stuff is all kind of created through the editorial of the music team. And they were making edits that, seamlessly blended Ume's music and Ilan's music. And it was so awesome how two amazing composers, but very different stylistically, and yet the music was able to kind of like interlock and just work well within itself.
Something that you just said that I don't know that I knew, or if it even came up in my conversation with him, I may have forgotten, which means I need to study your knowledge retention work, published essays from the alternate timeline where that became your career. I did not realize there was a significant enough time gap between bringing on Ume and Ilan that you would make it sound like there was a little bit of a sitting with material and then widening from there.
I can't remember like the exact time frame. There was time. Like, it was the entire process for music on Tsushima was it was definitely longer than I think we would have been comfortable with and looking at in retrospect. But obviously everything worked out great, so we can now just be like, oh yeah, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I do remember now that like I believe that we had Ume writing some music for us for our initial demo for E3, and I can't remember what year that was. That might have been 2017.
God, is it that far back?
I don't remember. And then we either brought Ilan on right after or right before that. I can't remember. And I remember that we were actually recording at Abbey Road when Ilan had just finished writing Jin's theme. That was like the main feature in our 2018 demo that I think premiered at like the Game Awards or something with a live orchestra and all that. And I remember like hearing that. And Ilan had already been writing a bunch of stuff, but that was like kind of the, oh my gosh, this is the theme. This is so good. So yeah, I don't remember if it was 3 months or more, but
Right,
there
I see,
was
I
a
see.
little bit of staggering there. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't remember that there was a staggering in my mind.
Me neither.
Somehow it was a bit of just a two-pronged approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, yeah, just, I mean, like you said, these games are so fucking big. Like, getting one person to write, 3 hours of music or 4 hours, I forget what we had allotted for that one. It can just be hard. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think we were realizing that, oh yeah, we don't know if we can get all this in time.
So then obviously you ship the game, it goes great. Going from that into YOTEI seems like an interesting challenge because it's not the normal follow-up. Usually it's either a
Mm-hmm.
direct sequel, God of War into uh God of War Ragnarok or whatever. Like
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
these are very linear paths,
Yep.
or it's we're doing something totally different.
Yeah.
Um this was sort of both of those things, because there's obviously anyone that played Tsushima will feel a lot of familiar mechanics and
Mm-hmm.
surface level aesthetics and whatnot, but it's practically a new everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like was that always understood to be that way? Obviously neither Ume nor Ilan were involved in YOTEI. So
Mm-hmm.
clearly there was on some level a feeling of let's start fresh, I assume. But I'm
Yeah.
like,
I
what?
mean, it, so, the I think we did some soul searching, like really at the end of Tsushima. It was even before we started on YOTEI that it was like, what is a Ghost game? You know, we thought really hard about that, and you know what we came up with was, you know, lethal combat, transformative feudal Japan, you know, time machine, um, and you know, huge open world exploration. You know, those are kind of the things that make it a Ghost game. And you know, I remember when Nate and Jason, the creative directors, kind of presented the pitch of Ghost of Yōtei to the team. And I think it was nearly universal how excited everybody was. And I think part of it was that we didn't just want to make, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima 2 would have just been like, okay, cool. Now Jin goes on more adventures.
Right.
And this was such a unique challenge and just a whole new palette to deal with. So we had these pillars that we were going to work with, which made all the sense because these are the things that we had gotten good at over the last 6 years. But it, for us, I think it was just like this excitement of like, oh, awesome. This is a new place. So that means, you know, a completely different ambient experience. You know, this is a new kind of feel. I mean, taking it to Ezo and this giant expansive frontier, that's kind of where we came up with this. Why don't we do Wild West through the lens of feudal Japan for the score? And because we were doing that, you know, new hero, new story, new location, new time period, it just felt like it felt right to find a different voice for what the music was going to be as well, because the game itself was so distinct in those ways while still being a Ghost game. And you know, the fact that we found Toma and he wrote the music that he did, I mean, I can't imagine a better scenario.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to hear about that. I've known him for almost 20 years, but I hadn't seen him in a while since I think before the pandemic. It'd been a little bit. I remember doing one of these with Mark Mothersbaugh, and he had helped out on
Ratchet and Clank,
the Ratchet and Clank
Yep.
game that they had done, but I remember when he did this game called Africa that was, you know, big, audacious orchestral score recorded in Los Angeles, no less, which was crazy, unheard of now. And that was around the time I did Flow, because we were kind of in suddenly the circles of, hey, here's a new thing, and they were both Sony projects, and so yeah, so it's literally been like 19 years or something that I've known him, so it was when I saw his name show up, his new name,
Mhm.
uh, uh, in the credits, I was kind of immediately like, "Ooh, this will be interesting," because he's an interesting guy and
Yeah.
obviously has a lot of technique as a composer. The thing I
Mhm.
wasn't expecting, which is by far my favorite aspect of the whole thing, is what you just alluded to. I remember I was playing the game and I was like, "Am I hearing a harmonica?" I was like sneaking around in one of the first
Yeah.
within the first 90 minutes of the game. I remember going, you know, it had felt suggestive. It felt like you kind of eased in terms of how much it hard leans on the kind of Wild
Oh yeah.
West stuff, but then it
Mhm.
lets that grow and grow, which I thought was a very interesting choice. It was, first off, it's an exciting choice because as somebody who's just, you know, I'm just always, the games that light me up are the ones that kind of take these wild swings. And it's something I always try to do in my own work as well, of just, all right, what's the thing that no one's really going to expect?
Mm.
And some why Elon and I also got along, because it's similar. It's the thing we have in common, you know, is okay. Well,
Yeah.
what's the thing that there's a lot of people that can write, you know, orchestral music or can do this or that, but what's the thing that you don't expect? And so this, I was like, oh man, they really went a lot harder with a stylized choice than on
Yeah.
Tsushima, which made me very excited. But also there was an interesting kind of judicious unfurling of that choice. It didn't feel like the opening of the game was, "Ha ha, Leone." It
Yes.
really kind of
Exactly.
snuck in, and I would love to hear, was this a thing that took a lot of trial and error or iteration to kind of find that balance and step me through all that. Cause it's for me, it's the thing that absolutely elevates it into one of the year's very noteworthy, titles, because it wasn't just craft. There's a point of view that makes it really singular. And I can't get enough of that sort of thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely something that we were constantly tweaking through the whole project.
Mm,
It's like, there we were always asking ourselves like, yeah, is this too Western? Is this should we lean a little bit harder on Western here? Is this going a little too orchestral? And so there was, it was constant. And there was even an early version of the beginning of the game that was a little bit harder on the Western. And I was exactly to your point. I was like, that we can't start like that. Like it's a Japanese game. It is a Japanese story. And we want to be a little bit more judicious about how we kind of introduce the Western aspect, especially when the player starts. It's not like I'm in the Wild West of Japan. You got to like get through that first kind of mission and be
sure.
launched into the open world before you understand the expansiveness. And so yeah, we were definitely very kind of judicious. I think one of the other interesting things about the score compared to other games I've been thinking about is like on Tsushima, we would temp in music to try to get the feel of things. And so our temp score was actually music from Ume and Elon. Like
Right.
even before we had booked either of them, we were using their music because it was like, this is we want this game to sound like. For YOTEI, there was nothing. Like that music didn't exist. So we didn't have anything that we could plug in. I mean, we didn't want to like put in Morricone stuff because we didn't want it to sound like Morricone. And Toma did the perfect thing of making those two genres blend. And it's funny because I didn't learn this until we started doing press together, as the game was launching, that so he's from Japan. And what I didn't know is as a teenager, he did a foreign exchange and was sent to Oklahoma. And, being
Didn't know
this
that.
like non-English speaking exchange student, he spent time in Oklahoma, and that's kind of where he learned English. And, obviously, Oklahoma in the 1990s or whatever is a far cry from the 1880s. But it was still this formative experience of him being in the American West as a teenager, and that being his first experience in the country that, kind of, I think, helped synthesize his understanding of
hilarious.
the assignment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So was this one of those things that you and the powers that be at Sony or whomever wanted to go in that direction and then went and found him and he, fit the bill and was able to do it? Or did you find him and then the especially because the Western, it's like a modifier, it's like
Mhm.
your boon
Yeah.
in Hades. Like the Western thing adds such another spice that
Yeah.
I'm curious sort of what your order of operations was
For
here.
sure. Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting the kind of when we first started talking about the music for the game. So Jason Connell is one of our creative directors. The first thing that we started talking about he was like, I'm thinking folk music. And I know that's weird, but like let's see what there was as far as Japanese folk music. So I started researching and I found some stuff. And then he found this amazing artist. Her name is Hoko Yamasaki. And she is this amazing singer-songwriter. And she had this incredible album in like 1975 called Tobimasu that is just her and her guitar singing these sad, sorrowful songs about, being a jilted lover. And I guess I'm wrong. I said, oh, we didn't have like any kind of temp tracks. We would put her music in as we were writing kind of
Mm,
in the frontier. It was like her music and Ainu music. This guy, Oki Kano, who is this tonkori player, which is the Ainu guitar. And those were kind of the temp tracks that we would use of just, I'm writing through this vast playing of Ezo, how does this feel? And both of those were like, oh, this feels pretty cool. This could work. And then from there, we started looking for composers. And, again, we were like, this is a tall order, but, we want a Japanese composer because we think that they're going to understand the Japanese side of it. And we were thinking more kind of folky at that point. We weren't like full bore Wild West. I think over a couple months that started to like solidify of like, well, what if we try to do Wild West through the lens of feudal Japan, through the instruments of feudal Japan? And that's what we started with.
But where did that insight come from? Because it's so noticeable that the game doesn't have, like, yes, of course, the kinship that this and of course Tsushima both have with like Kurosawa, which is so interwoven with
exactly
Western, but it's a sleight of hand more than anything. It's suggestive. Like, you don't, yes, of course, there's like the standoff bits and what, but it doesn't scream Western. The music is the biggest signpost of that influence if you just take a snapshot of the game, because I think it does a very earnest job. Like, it's not obsessively doing these Leone send-ups and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or even Kurosawa, it obviously takes its own identity. So that's where I go, you describe it in this post hoc way as if it's self-evident, but I'm searching for that moment because it really had to have been a kind of brilliant insight on someone's part.
Well, yeah, it was a slow process. And there were some things that like we came across early on that were like, oh, that's very Western like one of the first missions in the game, you go up to this inn and we'd already always had planned of like, oh yeah, she walks up to the inn and then boom, smash, wide shot of her in the doorway, backlit and just slowly walking in there, like the classic, like, oh, the gunslinger walks
like
into
the
the saloon kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But as far as the music, what we started with was this is a small, intimate thing. Like, this is not a big kind of orchestral score. This is a very intimate personal story, and the music is going to have to reflect that. So our initial kind of idea of what the kind of instrument palette was going to be, and this is before we had a composer. This was me and Jason and the PlayStation music team kind of came up with we're going to have a small orchestral ensemble, like maybe, cello, violin, viola. And we're going to have, shakuhachi, shamisen, because that is Atsu's
kind of literally wearing one. Yeah.
Yep. So that's got to be in there. And then I think I was like, oh, and we should do nylon string guitar, because that can blend in, that can provide a little bit of kind of Western flavor, but also kind of not be like over the top. And it's funny because we had some demos come in with steel string guitars, and it's just like, nope, that's too Western, and that's too harsh and percussive. And even just the nylon strings was like, okay, this is blending into that instrument palette better. And then from there, that was what we started with. And then the really awesome thing was that from there, it was largely organic. Like, with that palette, that is kind of where we selected Toma, and we had a few other composers we were looking at, and we opted for Toma for a few reasons, and one of which was that his demos had this amazing Wild West through the lens of feudal Japan feel that nothing else hit in quite the same way. And his melodies were also just like, we were really after memorable melodies, and all of the melodies that he wrote in his demos were like, we played them for people in the studio, and then you're just hearing everybody whistling and humming those melodies. So you're like, yep, that's working.
There's no test on that. I remember once I remember once having coffee with a girl named Molly Elfman, who's Danny Elfman's daughter. And I asked her, what's your earliest memory of your father's music? And she said, when I was maybe 9 or 10, he was writing Nightmare Before Christmas. And she said he would play me the songs and then like send me off to go play in the yard and listen to see if I would be humming to myself the songs from Nightmare as his test of if they're
Yeah.
ready. And I'm like, boy, what a great method that, because you're exactly right. If someone's sitting there at their desk humming a piece that's, because it was part of a presentation and or something like that, like there's just no substituting what that feedback
Yep.
is.
No,
You can't
exactly.
convince someone a thing is memorable, in other
Yeah.
words. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so from there, what to me was what solidified it was just how much so many different people then brought to the palette and how the palette expanded. So, when we were talking about doing music for the kitsune, who was like in the like snowy ninja area, Toma had the idea of like, oh, well, what if we do like foot stomp percussion, which is what they do in No Theater. And it was just like, oh, fuck, yeah, that's brilliant. And none of us would have come up with that, but you definitely did. And then Pete Scaturo on the music team found Justin Johnson, who plays lap steel. And that was like this whole other dimension that we hadn't even thought of before. And hearing the lap steel and like biwa or koto playing at the same time was just like, whoa, I don't know that those instruments have ever played together before, but this is special. This is amazing. And then, Toma brought in the whistling, which again, kind of an homage to Morricone, but we never like ever said like, we need whistling because that is Wild West. It was just,
and it never reads as kitschy. It never reads as it almost reads, as a bit of, this is a strange analogy, but it's almost like a convergent evolution. How if you read like a biology textbook, how bats and birds developed wings independently from one another. It's just because sort of different lineages discovered quote unquote a value in having wings, and they developed along separate wavelength. But birds are not descendants of bats or vice versa. They sprung independently from a common ancestor that did not have wings. And it kind of feels like that, where you have a lot of these gestures, the harmonica, the pedal steel, but it doesn't feel like a parody. It almost feels like in some strange way you came to that conclusion on your own. And so because we live in this world, it resonates as a Western, but it's not trying to be this hammy, wink and wink, 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 nod, nod at the Westerns, which is so impressively narrow of a target to hit, I think, because it's just so easy. Because this game, opens with this kind of brutally savage narrative premise. And to then be kind of like, check it out. Once Upon a Time in the West was my favorite movie growing up also. Like, it just would totally ruin any attempt at actual pathos that your story is chasing after. And because, it's really hard. There's very few movies that do the Western thing, like the 3:10 to Yuma remake I remember from a few years ago, or like True Grit from the Coen brothers, where they're trying to evoke the Western, but in a totally not cheeky way, And it's just really rare. It's most Westerns, they're owning it. You think about, like, I think it was the third Pirates, where they're doing like a big, widescreen showdown thing, and Hans goes full electric guitar Morricone homage because the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and parody and all that is perfectly comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was just, I remember the further I got into the game, I was increasingly impressed at the ability to walk that line. And I found myself thinking, this must have been a lot of, okay, one step too far on this cue. Oh, this one actually could go a little further. Let's push it a little. I mean, even like the voices come in at the very end of the game, you got this like male choir kind of thing. It was like, it's all these ingredients are there, but they all somehow feel earned and justified. I was just thoroughly impressed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's funny though. One last anecdote on that is, you mentioned Once Upon a Time in the West, and one of our designers was working on a prototype for a mission of like Atsu walking into another kind of uh, a inn or something that was all like creepy and like tense. And so he used Harmonica Man from Once Upon a Time in the West. And of course, it worked great in his prototype. It's like, that sounds pretty cool. And played it for the music team. And they're like, okay, cool, we'll get harmonica. I was like, well, I don't know that we want to go crazy on harmonica. Like, it's cool that it works here. Let's go for that vibe and that tone rather than we got to get a bunch of harmonica. And it wasn't until I think the first time that I heard it is when you finish the game and then you kind of go to the like you kind of like rewind the clock and you can keep playing. And the first kind of music piece that begins as you're like, okay, I'm resuming my journey now, is one of the harmonica pieces, and it just fits so perfectly that it's just like, we did use it sparingly. You did hear it in the beginning, but I think those might be those two and maybe one other place is the only places we use it. And but yeah, you're right. It was a kind of, we were constantly kind of just working with like, is it too much? Is it too little? Can we roll that back? Can we push that a little bit more?
Did you ever have a moment of doubt where you thought, have we drunk the Kool-Aid on that idea we thought was cool, but actually we're totally ruining this game? Because I have that about every 6 weeks on a project where you get down these rabbit holes and you're like, oh, what if it's this and then this and then this, and all these things start to compile, and then you take a step back and go, oh my God.
I mean, it was, so we had that until our announced trailer. And it was just like we were talking before. It's like, you're so close to this and you're listening to it and you're like, this is really good. This is great. Oh my gosh, this is so unique. This is so cool. What if we're just too close to it and everybody's like, wow, cultural appropriation much? Or, whatever. Like, what if the reaction is negative? And but we had enough confidence in ourselves of like, we think this is right. We think this feels good. It works so well with this trailer that we've created. I mean, this is what we're doing. This is the game.
Right. Sink or swim.
And the justification was when it came out and just seeing all the comments about people reacting specifically to the music and reacting positively to the music. I mean, it was definitely a like, oh, thank God. There was this like huge relief of like, okay, we weren't crazy and it does seem to be resonating with people. And I
mean, the trailer was last year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was about a year before.
Yeah. So in other words, had the trailer been this massive, like, let's say everyone goes, oh my God, best trailer ever, except the music is horrible. Like, so in other words, the game seems to be highly anticipated, but this one single detail is, 1 year to decide, all right, do we just say, look, this is our vision and people may or may not like it, and that's the nature of art? Or do we try to take this feedback? Having a year to decide that and then execute it would have been quite the feat. So, it sort of didn't have a lot of choice, I suspect. And it was mostly just relief that you weren't going to be in that.
We had probably like we'd recorded at least a third of the score at that point, I think. So yeah, I mean, we could have, worked some magic with edits and stuff, but yes, it was definitely a lot of relief of like, okay, this seems to be resonating. We did not make a stupid decision. And thank goodness people like this. And then, it was just every cue that Toma wrote was just like, they just kept getting better and just incorporating everything and just kind of, building on top of the foundation that he started with. So it was really hard to get to the point of like, yes, we figured it out. This is it. This is the music of YOTEI. But then once we kind of cracked that, it was so fun hearing kind of what he would come up with next.
Yeah, I can imagine. In my experience, when the kind of profile of a score has been figured out, when you've cracked that, it's not quite right to call it the formula, but it's kind of like it's like the silhouette
Mhm.
almost is
Yeah.
a weirdly more accurate, despite being more vague way to describe it, because I feel like then the music kind of starts to write itself because you suddenly understand. It's like suddenly being fluent in a language where you
Mhm.
just suddenly know what it needs. And sometimes that can come quite late in a project before that breakthrough happens. And
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
it's literally, just I've had it every way. I've had projects where I was asked to demo, I demoed, and for whatever reason that I can't explain, that first instinct from the demo process ended up forming that basis of our vision all the way through to the end. And then there's sometimes where I look back at the demo that landed the job and I'm like, oh my God, we're a mile away from that now. We really iterated our way into something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, I can picture once you really had that worked out, then it's just this playground of understanding the ingredients and
Yeah. Well, and I mean, so Toma's demos, he gave us 3 demos, and all 3 of those they're in the final product. There are 3 of the most iconic songs in the score. Um,
oh wow, that's
and which is
particularly
also, I mean,
rare.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it took me a while to kind of like, towards the end of the project, kind of listening back and realizing, and the other crazy thing is, it's not like, oh, cool, this was a demo. Yeah, that's good. Rework this, rework that, rework that. It's like, oh, this is in the game almost exactly as it was in the demo.
Yeah,
Which I think is a testament to it. And, I think I almost feel like we maybe weren't as sure of ourselves as we maybe wanted to be. So we kind of wandered for a bit away from that to try to figure out, like, well, should this be something else? Does this need to be something else? Before we kind of circle back and realize, oh no, we've been doing it right the whole time. We just need
that's great.
more. And
Right.
yeah.
Well, look, man, it's been an hour and a half of your time. It really does. And what a crazy arc, both for you, but also just hearing about the game and like just the whole process. And like, I've been just so happy for you guys. Like I said, I can't remember if we were recording yet or not, but there were a lot of reasons why I was hoping that this one was going to do well. And you know, my attitude is always there are certain projects that it's sort of becomes a rising tide raising all boats if they come off well. You want to live in a world where a big studio making a big game doesn't come across like, cynical, sort of generic commercial, just I don't know what the term would be, like sort of what in Hollywood the Hollywood terms was called like just generic summer blockbuster where you go, yep, it's another one of those.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really you want to live in a world because I really one of the things I love so much about games that is so unique to games versus literally anything else is the way you can have a one man project living side by side in the consciousness of players with a project that took 1,000 people to ship in 5 years and $200 million. Like you can literally like in this year, I was watching one of the YouTube channels that I follow, kind of game in analytics, listing some of their favorite games of the year, and they would literally put a game like Yote alongside a game like Blue Prince, which I don't know if you
Exactly.
played Blue
Yeah.
Prince, but it's literally
Oh yeah.
basically a guy. Um, and and everything in between, the Expedition 33s in the middle, and Hades shipped by
Hmm.
Supergiant is about 20 people.
Yep. Yeah.
And I mean, they wrote me into some of that, and our orchestra that we recorded in London on Hades 2 was about 5 times larger than the development team. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those crazy, it's one of those funny, just crazy realities. And so, yeah. Anyway, this is one of those where something that had a kind of artfulness to it, but also flexed the muscles of things that only a project of a certain scale would even be in a position to flex. It's just so great. It's been so wonderful to see it actually manage to stick the landing on those things. Um, and so yeah, I was so stoked. I'm grateful that we didn't that I am an idiot and just let it slip my mind to have you on here earlier when we first started talking about it, so that we could encompass just a whole new chapter of your work as a result, which makes me happy selfishly as well, and for anyone listening, because I mean, yeah, to me, YOTEI is a real achievement, and
Thank you.
to hear you unpack it is awesome.
This is a lot of fun. And yeah, I think it's funny because I think you reached out like 2 years ago, like, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? I'm like, I would, but I really want to talk about this game, and we haven't even announced it yet. So I'm just gonna put that off for a while. And yeah, super glad to have this opportunity, and always super fun to chat with you. And
Yeah, man, it had been in my back of my mind for a while, but I'm really glad. Yeah, that good things came to those that waited, I guess, whether sort of overly intentionally or not. Um, so yeah, well, again, congrats.
thank you.
It's been exciting to see. I'm sure there will be more. Hopefully, we'll uh, converge on GDC and see you win a bunch of gang awards and dice and all the rest of it. It's really cool. And like I said, as someone who has a long history of a sort with Toma, I just there are a few things that I have come to love more in this career that I've been lucky enough to have than seeing, crossing paths with people who also make music, who are just good people, just fundamentally decent human beings,
Yeah.
who are also really talented, and then good things come their way. Like one thing that people probably don't know was that in the early days of the pandemic, when everyone was stuck at home, he was doing these like online guided meditation kind of things to help people deal with stress and stuff. It's like, that's the kind of guy we're talking about. It's not just not just a composer with talent, or not just a professional or whatever, but
He is such a sweet guy. Yeah,
really
he
is
I
very
mean,
wholesome and very, it's just great. I just love it. It just makes me happy when good things happen to good people, basically.
for
And
sure.
never a short. I have no saturation point on those kinds of little victories that I love to witness. So yeah, this game ticks a lot of those boxes. In other words,
Indeed.
I think you may have just witnessed a murder.
That was actually Erika Ishii screaming at me.
Ah,
I
good.
I have her set up as my notification when I have a meeting. So so that was my 5-minute
I'm gonna
warning.
text
And
her right this second to
yeah, tell her Brad
say
has
what just happened. That's so
I never
funny.
get sick of hearing that either. I just had somebody walk by earlier today and that happened. They're like, that wasn't the Wilhelm scream. I was like, no, that was Erica. She was reminding me I had a meeting.
That
So
is
thank you,
so
Erica.
funny. I'm seeing if she'll respond in the next 2 seconds. But in the meantime, Doctor Reverend, the great Reverend
Reverend
Doctor.
Doctor, please.
Yeah, my
Please.
apologies. My apologies. um, what a pleasure, sir. I feel like I
Likewise.
learned a little bit about metaphysics and immortality, but I learned a lot about game audio career pathways. And so I consider it all told an excellent use of time.
Awesome. As do I.
Well, thanks again. Thanks again for doing it.
Yeah.
And like I said, hopefully, fingers crossed, get to see you all, uh, getting some much deserved accolades for the achievements.
I mean, if people like it. That's what matters to me. I mean, I am super proud of the team. So any accolades they fully deserve, but also like you said, it's a hell of a great year for games. So there's a lot of amazing sounding games out there. So really can't go wrong.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Austin.